1 year had passed since Kethra first noticed the gap in the maps. 1 year of quiet investigation. 1 year of collecting stories, tracking down rumors, and piecing together fragments of truth from across the galaxy. Now she sat in her small office in the Grand Archive, surrounded by notes and recordings, finally ready to face what she had learned. She had talked to hundreds of people. Traders who had glimpsed human space from border stations. Soldiers who had served under officers with human encounters. Scholars who had studied ancient records. Diplomats who attended summits where the topic was never discussed. Pirates who had made the mistake of raiding too close to the wrong border. Every story was different. Every story was the same dot the Morvith scholar had told her about the great fleet that never returned. The Korathi veteran had described cargo ships that could destroy worlds. The Thelian smuggler had spoken of kind women who offered coffee and job opportunities to thieves. The Valorian trader had whispered about border stations where human merchants gave fair prices and never cheated anyone, ever, no matter how easy it would have been. None of it made sense. None of it followed the rules Kethra had grown up believing. The galaxy operated on a simple principle. The strong took from the weak. This was true in nature and in civilization. Species grew powerful by conquering others. Empires expanded by absorbing their neighbors. Trade worked because both parties feared the consequences of unfair dealing. Everything was based on power and the threat of its use. The humans broke every one of these rules. They were not technologically superior to the rest of the galaxy. Their ships were good, but not exceptional. Their weapons were powerful, but not unique. Their population was large, but not overwhelming. By every measure the consortium used to assess species threat levels, humans should have been unremarkable. A middle-tier civilization at best. Nothing to fear. And yet every species in the galaxy feared them. Kethra spread her notes across her desk and tried to find the pattern. The Morveth had sent 12,000 ships. The ships had not been destroyed, just kept. The crews had been treated well. The message had been polite. Please don't come back. The Korathi admiral had destroyed medicine meant for her own people. The humans had sent more medicine anyway. They had forgiven her. Please don't make us do this again. The Thelian smuggler had come to steal. The humans had given him exactly what he needed and offered him a job. Every encounter followed the same shape. Someone approached human space with hostile or selfish intentions. The humans responded with overwhelming kindness. And somehow, that kindness carried a weight that no threat could match. Kethra remembered something her grandfather had told her when she was young. He had been a hunter in his youth, tracking dangerous animals across their home world. The most frightening creature I ever met, he had said, was not the largest or the fastest or the most aggressive. It was a mountain cat I found standing over a fresh kill. It looked at me, and I knew it could destroy me easily. But it simply turned and walked away. It wasn't afraid of me. It wasn't impressed by me. It just didn't care enough to bother. The humans were like that, Kethra realized. They looked at the galaxy with all its wars and conquests and power struggles, and they simply didn't care enough to participate. They had chosen a different game entirely. While everyone else competed to be the strongest, the humans had stepped outside the competition altogether. That was what made them terrifying. A predator could be fought or fled. An enemy could be understood and countered. But how did you deal with someone who refused to be your enemy? How did you defeat someone who responded to attacks with forgiveness? How did you conquer someone who gave you everything you needed before you even asked? Kethra pulled up a blank document on her terminal. Her mentor had told her to stop investigating. She had ignored him. Now she needed to decide what to do with what she had learned. She could write a report. She could present her findings to the archive's leadership. She could recommend new survey missions, new diplomatic initiatives. New attempts to map the unmapped, but she wouldn't. Because she finally understood why the map stopped. It wasn't fear of human weapons. It wasn't respect for human territory. It wasn't any of the normal reasons one species avoided another. The map stopped because mapping human space would require understanding it. And understanding it would require accepting that everything the galaxy believed about power and strength and survival was wrong. The humans had built something different. They had created a civilization based on principles that made no sense to anyone outside it. They were proof that another way was possible, and that was the most dangerous knowledge of all. If word spread that the humans had achieved what they had achieved, questions would follow. Why couldn't the Carthi be more like humans? Why did the Moraveth abandon their peaceful ways? Why did the Thelians accept that crime was their only path to survival? The entire structure of galactic civilization rested on the assumption that competition and conflict were unavoidable. The humans proved otherwise. Their very existence was a challenge to everything the galaxy had built. So the maps stayed blank. The stories stayed whispered. The questions stayed unasked. Kethra wrote a single line in her report. Human space remains unmapped because no species has yet developed cartographic symbols for "Here there be kindness." She saved the file and sent it to her mentor. He would understand. He had understood for 200 years. Then she did something she had never done before. She pulled up a personal message window and composed a letter to the human border station nearest Valorian space. "My name is Kethra," she wrote. "I am a cartographer. I have spent 1 year learning about your people, and I have many questions. I do not wish to cross your border or disturb your peace. I simply wish to understand. If anyone is willing to talk to me, I would be grateful." She sent the message without expecting a reply. 3 days later, she received one. It was short and warm and signed by someone named Sarah. "We would love to talk to you," it said. "Ask anything you want. We have nothing to hide and everything to share. Would you like some recipes while we chat? Our coffee is pretty good, but our cookies are even better." Kethra laughed out loud. It was not the response she had expected. It was exactly the response she should have expected. She wrote back immediately, full of questions and curiosity and something that felt almost like hope. Maybe she couldn't map human space. Maybe no one could. But perhaps she could learn something even more valuable. Perhaps she could learn how to become the kind of person who didn't need maps to find their way. Somewhere in human space, a grandmother was telling her grandchildren a bedtime story. She spoke of the frightened neighbors who lived beyond the borders. Species who had grown up in harsh conditions, who had learned to fear kindness, who built their civilizations on competition and conflict because they didn't know any other way. "Why don't we teach them not to be afraid?" a small child asked. The grandmother smiled and pulled the blanket up to the child's chin. "We're trying, little one. We're always trying. We send them medicine when they're sick. We forgive them when they make mistakes. We offer them coffee and conversation instead of threats and demands." Slowly, very slowly, some of them are starting to understand. "How long will it take?" The grandmother looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a young Valorian cartographer was writing questions and receiving answers. Somewhere out there, a Thelian smuggler was visiting his healthy sister and thinking about second chances. Somewhere out there, a Karathi admiral was teaching young warriors that true strength meant choosing mercy. "We have time," the grandmother said. "We have all the time in the universe." And every generation, a few more of them figure it out. A few more of them learn that kindness isn't weakness, that helping others helps everyone. That the best way to be strong is to lift others up instead of pushing them down. She kissed the child's forehead. "They'll come around eventually. They always do. Until then, we keep being kind. We keep being patient. We keep showing them that another way is possible." She smiled. "Now sleep well, little one. Tomorrow we have neighbors to help, and cookies to bake, and a galaxy to gently, slowly, lovingly change." The child closed their eyes. Outside the window, the stars burned bright, an eternal dot, and somewhere in the Grand Archive, a cartographer was learning that the most important places couldn't be found on any map. They could only be found in the space between fear and hope, in the moment when someone chose to be kind instead of cruel, in the quiet revolution that happened whenever one being looked at another and saw not an enemy to defeat, but a friend they hadn't met yet. The map stopped at human spacetime, but understanding had no borders at all. The Korathi Military Academy stood on a mountain peak, its towers reaching toward a sky filled with stars. For 300 years, the academy had trained the finest warriors in the hegemony. Its graduates commanded fleets that had conquered dozens of worlds. Its instructors wrote the tactics that shaped galactic warfare. To be invited to speak at the graduation ceremony was the highest honor a Korathi soldier could receive. Admiral Vexinar had received that honor. She stood backstage, listening to the crowd of young graduates cheer and stomp their feet. They were eager for glory. They wanted to hear stories of conquest and victory. They wanted to be inspired. Vexinar was the most decorated officer in Korathi history. She had fought in 40 campaigns. She had commanded the largest fleet ever assembled by her people. Her name was spoken with respect across 100 worlds. The young graduates expected her to fill them with pride and courage. She was going to disappoint them. The ceremony master called her name, and she walked onto the stage. The cheering grew louder. Thousands of young Korathi warriors looked up at her with admiration in their eyes. They saw a hero. They did not know what she was about to tell them. "Sit down," she said. Her voice was calm, but carried easily through the vast hall. "I am going to tell you about the only battle I ever lost." The cheering stopped. Confusion spread through the crowd. Admiral Vexinar had never lost a battle. Everyone knew this. Her record was perfect. "It happened 40 years ago," she continued. "I was a patrol commander then, young and arrogant and certain of my own superiority. My fleet was stationed near the edge of known space, not far from the border of human space." She saw several graduates shift uncomfortably at the mention of humans. Good. They should be uncomfortable. One day, our sensors detected a damaged vessel drifting near the border. It was a human ship, small and clearly not built for combat. Standard protocol demanded that we capture the ship, interrogate the crew, and gather intelligence. The humans were mysterious. Any information about them was valuable. Vexinar paused. The memory was still sharp after all these years. "We disabled the ship easily. It barely had weapons. We boarded with a full assault team, ready for resistance. We found 6 humans and a cargo hold full of medical supplies." "Medical supplies?" someone in the audience asked. "Medicine, equipment, treatments for a plague that was spreading through several Korathi colony worlds at the time." Vexinar's voice grew heavy. The humans were on a mission of mercy. They were bringing help to our people. Our government had been too proud to ask for assistance, so the humans had simply decided to provide it anyway. The hall was completely silent now. "I was young and stupid," Vexinar said. "I saw the humans as weak because they had come to help instead of to fight. I saw their kindness as a flaw to be exploited. I took them prisoner. And then, to teach them a lesson about Korathi strength, I ordered my crew to destroy the medical supplies." She heard gasps from the audience. Even among warriors, what she had done was shameful. I laughed as I gave the order. I thought I was being clever. I thought I was showing the humans that the Korathi did not need their charity. She shook her head slowly. "I was a fool. What happened?" A young voice called out. "For 3 days, nothing. We held the humans in our brig. They did not resist. They did not complain. They simply waited, calm and patient, as if they knew something we did not. I found their silence disturbing, but I told myself it was the silence of fear. Vexnar looked out at the sea of young faces. On the fourth day, my fleet was surrounded. Ships appeared from nowhere, thousands of them, forming a perfect sphere around our position. They were not warships. They were cargo vessels, each one the size of a small moon. But our sensors detected weapons on those vessels. Weapons powerful enough to crack planets. Weapons we had no defense against. How many ships? Someone asked. We stopped counting at 10,000. They just kept coming. Vexnar remembered the fear she had felt, a cold terror unlike anything in her experience. Then a human appeared on my view screen. He was not a soldier. He looked like someone who should be tending a garden or reading books to children. He looked sad. She could still see his face in her memory. Kind eyes, gentle expression. No anger at all. He said, "We know you destroyed the medicine. We've already sent more. The colony will be fine." Vexinar's voice grew quiet. Then he told me they were returning my crew. All of them, unharmed. He said they had also identified the pirates who had been raiding our outer systems and were sending us the coordinates. The young graduates looked confused. This was not how enemies behaved. I waited for the threat, Vexnar said. I waited for demands, conditions, some display of dominance. I knew how war worked. The stronger side always demanded something from the weaker side. That was the natural order. What did he demand? Nothing. Vexnar let the word hang in the air. He said, "We forgive you. Please don't make us do this again." Then the cargo ships vanished. All of them. In an instant, they were gone. We were alone in empty space with our prisoners returned and our fleet untouched. She stepped forward, closer to the audience. I have fought 30 species. I have conquered worlds. I have faced enemies who wanted to destroy everything I cared about. None of them frightened me the way that human frightened me. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Because I realized in that moment exactly what had happened. We had hurt something that did not want to hurt us back. We had attacked something that had only come to help. And instead of destroying us, which they clearly could have done, they have forgiven us and asked us to be better. Why is that frightening? A young graduate asked. Isn't that just weakness? No. Vexinar's voice was sharp. Weakness is being unable to strike back. What the humans showed me was something else entirely. They were able to destroy my fleet. They chose not to. They were able to demand punishment for what I had done. They chose to forgive. That is not weakness. That is a kind of strength we do not have a word for. She began to pace across the stage. Think about it. The galaxy is full of species who prove their power through violence. We conquer to show we are strong. We destroy to make others fear us. We demand tribute to confirm our superiority. This is how we have always operated. This is what we understand. She stopped and faced the graduates directly. The humans operate differently. They prove their power by not using it. They show their strength through mercy. They make us fear them by being kind when they could be cruel. And it works. It works better than any weapon I have ever seen. How? Someone called out. Because I still remember that human's face 40 years later. I still hear his voice asking me to be better. I still feel the shame of what I did and the gratitude for being forgiven. Vexinar touched her chest over her heart. No enemy has ever left such a mark on me. No conquest has ever changed me the way that encounter changed me. The humans did not defeat my fleet. They defeated my certainty that strength means violence. They defeated my belief that kindness is weakness. They defeated something inside me that I did not even know could be defeated. She returned to the center of the stage. The maps stop at human space. You all know this. You have been told not to cross that border, and you have obeyed without asking why. Now you know. The humans are not our enemies. They are something far more dangerous. They are a mirror that shows us what we could become if we chose to be better. She looked out at the young faces, seeing her own younger self in their confusion and doubt. I am not telling you to be weak. I am telling you to understand what true strength looks like. The humans have power we cannot match, and they use it to help, to heal, to forgive. They are terrifying because they are kind. Remember that. Remember it every time you face a choice between destruction and mercy. She gave them a traditional Korethi salute. Become warriors worthy of such enemies. Become the kind of soldiers who could face humans without shame. Become better than I was. She walked off the stage in silence. No one cheered. No one stomped their feet. But as she left the hall, she heard something she had not heard in 40 years of military service. She heard young Korethi warriors thinking. That, she decided, was victory enough. Griggs had made many bad decisions in his life. He had stolen his first ship at the age of 16. He had smuggled weapons across 3 different war zones. He had cheated business partners and lied to customs officers and broken enough laws to fill a small library. But the worst decision he ever made was accepting a job from a stranger in a dark bar on the edge of known space. The stranger had no name, or at least would not share one. He wore a hood that hid his face and spoke in a whisper that could have belonged to any species. He slid a data chip across the table and named a sum of money that made Griggs's heart stop. "Retrieve this item," the stranger said, "and the payment is yours." Griggs looked at the chip. The coordinates it contained were inside human space. "No one goes there," he said. "No one comes back." "People come back," the stranger replied. "They simply choose not to talk about what they experienced. This makes them unreliable. You, however, have a reputation for completing jobs regardless of difficulty. I am willing to pay for that reputation." Griggs was a Thelian, a species known throughout the galaxy for their criminal enterprises. His people were small and quick, with gray skin and large black eyes. They survived by being clever and by never turning down profitable work. The money the stranger offered would pay off every debt Griggs had accumulated over 20 years of smuggling. It would buy medicine for his sister, who was dying of a disease their family could not afford to treat. It would give him a fresh start. "What is the item?" he asked. "A stone tablet. It belongs to an ancient species called the predecessors. The humans keep it in a museum on one of their inner worlds." "I want it. You want me to steal from humans?" "I want you to retrieve property that should never have been in their possession. The humans have no right to predecessor artifacts. They are newcomers to this galaxy. The tablet belongs with older civilizations." Griggs thought about his sister. He thought about his debts. He thought about all the stories he had heard about human space. Stories that made no sense but still frightened him in ways he could not explain. Then he took the job. 3 days later, his ship crossed the border into human space. He expected alarms. He expected weapons locking onto his vessel. He expected, perhaps, to simply disappear like so many others supposedly had. Instead, he received a polite communication from a nearby station. "Welcome to human space," a friendly voice said. "We've detected your vessel." Detected your vessel. Do you need any assistance? Fuel? Repairs? Directions?" Griggs almost turned around right then. The voice was too warm. The offer was too kind. Something about it felt deeply wrong. "I am fine," he managed to say. "Just passing through." "Of course." "Safe travels. Let us know if you need anything." The communication ended. No one stopped him. No one followed him. He traveled deeper into human space, and the strangeness only grew. The planets he passed were beautiful. The space stations were busy with trade and travel. Human ships moved in peaceful patterns, and none of them treated his presence as unusual or threatening. He reached the target planet after 4 days of travel. It was a world covered in green forests and blue oceans, with cities that spread across the landscape in elegant patterns. The museum was in the capital city, a large building made of white stone and glass. Grix landed his ship at a public port and walked through streets filled with humans going about their daily lives. They smiled at him. Some waved. A child asked if he was an alien and seemed delighted when he said yes. The museum was free to enter. Grix walked through halls filled with artifacts from across the galaxy. He saw Moraveth sculptures and Korathi weapons and Valorian star charts. Each item was displayed with careful respect and detailed information about its origin. The humans had not conquered these things. They had collected them, preserved them, honored them. The predecessor tablet was in a room dedicated to ancient civilizations. It sat on a simple stand, unguarded and unprotected. Grix approached it slowly, his heart pounding. This was too easy. There had to be a trap. He reached for the tablet. That's a beautiful piece, isn't it? Grix spun around. A human woman stood behind him. She was middle-aged with brown hair and kind eyes. She wore simple clothes and held 2 cups of a hot brown liquid. I wasn't stealing it, Grix said automatically. The woman smiled. Of course you were. That's why you came here. Someone hired you, offered you a lot of money, and told you we wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. She held out one of the cups. Coffee? It's a human drink. Most species find it pleasant. Grix took the cup without thinking. His hands were shaking. You knew I was coming? We know about everyone who enters our space. We also know that you have debts you cannot pay, and a sister who is dying. The woman's eyes were gentle, not accusing. We know that you took this job out of desperation, not malice. We know you're not a bad person, Grix, just a tired one who has run out of options. How do you know my name? We know a lot of things. She gestured toward a nearby bench. Would you like to sit? You look like you could use a rest. And maybe a conversation. Grix sat. He did not know what else to do. The woman sat beside him and sipped her coffee calmly. The tablet belongs to the museum, she said. It was given to us by the last surviving member of the predecessor species, who asked us to keep it safe and share it with anyone who wanted to learn from it. We cannot let you take it, but we can help you with your other problems. Why would you help me? I came here to steal from you, because helping costs us very little, and letting you suffer helps no one. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small container. This is the medicine your sister needs. Enough for a full treatment. It's yours. Grix stared at the container, his vision blurred with tears he had not expected. I don't understand, he whispered. I came here as a thief. You should be punishing me. You should be angry. Should we? The woman tilted her head. You made a desperate choice in a desperate situation. Punishing you won't undo that choice or prevent future desperation. Helping you might actually change something. She paused. Besides, we really don't like it when people try to steal from us. This way is better for everyone. You get what you actually need. We keep what we're protecting. No one gets hurt. And if I had succeeded, if I had taken the tablet, the woman's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. For just a moment, Grix saw something ancient and patient looking back at him. Something that had seen empires rise and fall. Something that could be gentle because it chose to be gentle, not because it had to be. You wouldn't have succeeded, she said simply. But we prefer not to reach that point. It's much nicer to have coffee and conversation instead. She stood and offered him her hand. The museum has an opening for a security consultant. Someone who understands how thieves think. Good pay, full benefits, housing provided. Your sister could move here for her treatment. Our medical facilities are quite good. She smiled. Think about it. Grix returned to known space a week later. He did not bring the tablet. He did not contact the mysterious stranger who had hired him. He sold his ship, paid off his remaining debts, and moved his sister to a medical facility on the border of human space, where human doctors had agreed to treat her. When people asked about his journey, he said nothing. When smugglers asked if human space was vulnerable to theft, he laughed and walked away. When his sister asked why humans had helped them, he could only shake his head. I don't know, he told her. They just did. They helped because they could, and they could because they are something we don't have a word for. He never smuggled again. He never broke another law. Something had changed inside him during that conversation in the museum, and he could not explain it to anyone who had not experienced it themselves. The humans had shown him kindness, and in that kindness, he had glimpsed something that frightened him more than any weapon ever could. A power that had no need to prove itself, wielded by beings who had chosen gentleness when they could have chosen anything. He understood now why the map stopped at human space. Some borders were better left uncrossed. Not because of what you might lose, but because of what you might learn about yourself. The neutral station Harmony floated in empty space, far from any planet or star. It belonged to no species and served all species. Every 100 years, ambassadors from the 12 major civilizations gathered here to renew the trade accords. These agreements kept the galaxy functioning. They set rules for commerce, defined boundaries, and prevented the small conflicts that could grow into large wars. Ambassador Yixtel of the Korathi hegemony arrived at the station feeling confident. The Korathi were a proud warrior race. They stood taller than most species, with thick gray skin and 4 muscular arms. Their empire had grown steadily for the past 1,000 years through a combination of military strength and clever politics. Yixtel believed that strength was the only true currency in the galaxy. Everything else was just decoration. The meeting chamber was a vast circular room with 12 sections, one for each major species. Yixtel took his place among the Korathi delegation and looked around at the other ambassadors. There were the insect-like Vrix, always whispering among themselves. There were the tall, thin Valorians with their 4 eyes. There were the crystalline Moravith, ancient beings who looked like living statues made of purple glass. The first few hours of the summit passed without incident. The ambassadors discussed trade routes, tariffs, and border disputes. Yixtel found it all terribly boring. He had come here with a bigger purpose in mind. When the discussion turned to new business, he stood. I wish to propose an expedition, he announced. His voice echoed through the chamber. For 3 centuries, an entire region of space has remained outside our trade networks. I speak of human space. The humans have isolated themselves for too long. It is time to bring them into the galactic community. Silence fell over the chamber. It was not the thoughtful silence of consideration. It was the heavy silence of shock. Yixtel noticed that several ambassadors had gone pale. Others refused to meet his eyes. The Valorian delegation began whispering urgently among themselves. I propose a joint expedition, Yixtel continued, confused by the reaction. Representatives from all 12 species, traveling together under a flag of peace. We will establish diplomatic contact, negotiate trade agreements, and finally map this unknown region of space. The benefits could be enormous. Still no one spoke. Yixtel felt his confidence beginning to waver. He had expected some resistance, perhaps some debate about the costs involved. He had not expected this strange, fearful silence. Then someone rose from the Moravith section. It was the eldest member of their delegation, an ancient being whose crystalline body had grown dark with age. Yixtel knew her reputation. She was over 4,000 years old, one of the oldest living beings in the galaxy. She had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. She never spoke at these summits. She was known simply as the Witness. "Young Corthy," she said. Her voice was strange, like wind blowing through broken glass. "Do you know why the Moraveth, who once conquered 17 systems in a single generation, now pursue only peace?" Yixtel shook his head. The Moraveth's peaceful nature had always been a mystery. Their ancestors had been feared throughout the galaxy. Their military technology was still among the most advanced. Yet they had not fought a war in over 700 years. "I will tell you a story," the Witness said. "It happened 800 years ago, before most species in this chamber had even achieved space travel. The Moraveth Empire was at its height. We were arrogant and powerful, and hungry for more. Our leaders looked at a map of the galaxy and saw an unclaimed region along our eastern border. They called it human space." She paused. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the whispering ricks had stopped their constant chatter. "We assembled a fleet," she continued. 12,000 ships. The greatest armada our people had ever built. We filled those ships with our finest warriors and our most powerful weapons. We told ourselves that we would conquer this unknown region and add it to our empire. We told ourselves that whoever lived there would learn to fear the Moraveth. The old crystal being made a sound that might have been a bitter laugh. The fleet crossed the border. For 2 days, we received regular reports. The humans had detected us, but they had not responded with force. Our commanders grew confident. They said the humans were weak, that they would fall easily, that we would be home within a month with new worlds under our control. She paused again. Her eyes, if they could be called eyes, seemed to look at something far away. On the 3rd day, the report stopped. We sent scouts. The scouts did not return. We sent more ships. Those ships did not return either. For 1 full year, we heard nothing from our greatest fleet. And then? Yixtel asked. He found himself leaning forward, caught in the story despite his skepticism. And then one ship came back. The Witness let those words hang in the air. Around the chamber, several ambassadors lowered their heads. They had heard this story before, Yixtel realized. They all had. Just one ship, she continued, out of 12,000. But here is the strange thing, young Korathi. The crew was unharmed. Not a single person had been killed. They had been fed well. Old injuries had been healed. They carried gifts with them. Beautiful art and strange music and books filled with human stories. I do not understand, Yixtel said. If the humans were merciful, why did only one ship return? What happened to the rest of the fleet? The crew did not know. They remembered nothing after the 2nd day. They woke up on their ship, healthy and rested, with their navigation systems set for home. They carried a single message from the humans. Would you like to hear it? Yixtel nodded. The message said, "We hope you enjoyed your rest. Your people must have been very tired to send so many ships so far from home. We have kept the ships and crews for now. They seem to like it here. Perhaps they will want to return someday. Perhaps not. Please do not send more. We would hate for there to be any misunderstanding between our peoples. Also, your soldiers really seem to enjoy our food. We have included some recipes for your people to try. With warm regards, the Human Diplomatic Corps." The Witness fell silent. The chamber remained still. "We never sent another ship," she said finally. Neither did anyone else who heard this story. For 800 years, the galaxy has left human space alone. The maps stop at their border. Trade ships do not cross it. Military vessels do not approach it. This is not because we were ordered to stay away. It is because we understood, all of us, without needing to be told. Yixtel felt something cold settling in his stomach. Understood what? The ancient Moraveth looked at him with something that might have been pity. The humans did not fight our fleet. They did not have to. They simply asked us to stop, and we stopped. They asked us politely, with gifts and food and music. They were kind to us, even as they made it perfectly clear that kindness was a choice they were making. She paused. Do you understand now, young Korathi? The galaxy is full of species who threaten and destroy and conquer. We understand those species. We know how to deal with them. But the humans are something else. They're something we have no framework to comprehend. She sat down slowly, her old crystal body creaking. They are kind, she said. And they do not need to be. That is why the maps stop at human space. That is why your proposal will receive no support. That is why you should sit down and never speak of this again. Yixtel looked around the chamber. Every ambassador was nodding in agreement. Even his own Korathi delegation refused to meet his eyes. He sat down. The summit continued as if his proposal had never been made. But Yixtel could not stop thinking about the story. 12,000 ships. A message delivered with recipes and music. A request, not a threat. Please do not send more. For the first time in his life, the proud Korathi warrior understood what true power looked like, and it terrified him more than any army ever could. Kethra had always loved maps. As a child on her homeworld, she would spend hours looking at the old paper charts her grandfather kept in his study. The lines and symbols told stories of places she had never been. They whispered of adventure and discovery. Now, as a young cartographer working in the Grand Archive of the Valorian Consortium, she got to make those maps herself. The Grand Archive was the largest collection of stellar maps in the known galaxy. It floated in space like a giant metal flower, its many sections spreading out from a central core. Ships came from 1,000 worlds to buy navigation charts. Traders needed safe routes. Explorers needed accurate data. Military commanders needed to know where their enemies lived. The archive sold information to all of them. Kethra worked in the updating department. Her job was simple but important. She took old maps and made them new again. She added recently discovered planets. She removed space stations that no longer existed. She corrected errors that other cartographers had made. It was quiet work, but she enjoyed it. On the day, everything changed. She was updating a trade route map for a merchant company. The map showed a path from the Valorian home systems to the far edge of explored space. She traced the route with her finger, checking each waypoint against the latest survey data. Everything looked correct until she reached the eastern edge of the map. The map simply stopped. This was not unusual by itself. All maps had edges, but something about this edge felt strange. Kethra pulled up another map, this one showing a different region of space. She scrolled to its eastern boundary. It stopped at exactly the same coordinates. She checked a third map, then a fourth, then 100 more. Every single map in the archive ended at the same place. The boundary was marked with two simple words: human space. Kethra had heard of humans, of course. Everyone had. They were one of the younger species in the galaxy, having achieved space travel only about 3,000 years ago. They kept to themselves mostly. They traded with border stations sometimes. They were said to be friendly enough. But beyond these basic facts, she knew almost nothing about them. She tried to access more information. The archive had detailed files on every species in the galaxy. She could read about Korathi battle tactics, Moraveth history, Thelian trade customs, and thousands of other topics. But when she searched for information about human space, she found almost nothing. A few notes about border coordinates, some basic biological data about the species itself. No maps of their territory, no surveys of their planets, no charts of their shipping lanes. It was as if the entire region simply did not exist. Kethra felt a strange excitement building in her chest. This was a mystery, and she loved mysteries. Perhaps she had discovered an error in the archive systems. Perhaps the human data was stored in a different location. Perhaps she would be the one to find it and earn recognition from her superiors. She gathered her notes and walked to the office of her mentor, Droshvin. He was an ancient Valorian who had worked in the archive for over 200 years. His 4 eyes were clouded with age, but his mind remained sharp. If anyone knew about this strange gap in the records, it would be him. Draw single quotes, VEN sat behind a desk covered in old data tablets. He looked up as Kethra entered, his expression calm and patient as always. "Young one," he said, "what brings you to my office?" Kethra explained her discovery. She showed him the maps with their identical boundaries. She described her failed search for human survey data. She spoke quickly, unable to hide her excitement at finding something so strange. As she talked, she watched Droshvin's face change. The calm patience faded. His 4 eyes grew wide. His old hands began to tremble slightly. By the time she finished speaking, he looked like a different person entirely. He looked afraid. "You must stop this investigation," he said quietly. Kethra blinked in surprise. "But sir, I have found a significant gap in our records. Surely we should try to fill it. I could submit a request for new survey missions. I could contact human border stations and ask for—" "No." Droshvin's voice was firm. "You will do none of those things. I do not understand. The archive exists to collect information. We have maps of every region of space except this one. Does that not seem wrong to you?" Droshvin was silent for a long moment. He stared at his desk, his expression troubled. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "When I was young," he said, "even younger than you are now, I asked the same questions. I found the same gap in our records. I was curious, just as you are curious. I wanted to know why human space remained unmapped. What did you discover?" "I discovered that some questions answered themselves in their asking." He looked up at her, and his eyes held a depth of emotion she had never seen in him before. "I asked my mentor why we had no maps of human space. He grew pale and refused to answer. I asked the archive director. She transferred me to a different department. I asked a visiting Moravith scholar, one of the oldest beings I had ever met. Do you know what she did?" Kethra shook her head. She laughed. But it was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who has seen something terrible and learned to live with it. Then she told me to be grateful for my ignorance and to protect it carefully. "That makes no sense," Kethra said. "Knowledge is valuable. Ignorance is simply the absence of knowledge. How can ignorance be something to protect?" Droshvin stood slowly from his chair. He walked to his window and looked out at the stars. "The galaxy is full of dangerous species," he said. "The Korathi are warriors who live for conquest. The Vrix are manipulators who control through secrets. The Thelian pirates raid and steal without mercy. We understand these dangers. We map them, study them, prepare for them." He paused. "But some dangers cannot be mapped. Some things are frightening precisely because we cannot understand them. Are the humans dangerous?" The old cartographer did not answer for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been respect. Or fear, or both. "In 200 years of working in this archive, I have never met anyone who crossed into human space and came back unchanged. I have never found a record of conflict with humans that ended as expected. I have never heard a story about them that made complete sense." He turned to face her. "The maps stop at human space, young one. They stop because we have all agreed, every species in this galaxy, that we do not want to know what lies beyond." Kethra left his office with more questions than answers. She returned to her workstation and stared at the boundary line on her map. Human space. Two simple words that somehow carried